our goal is to inject the fuel and then get out of the way. So we will help on job descriptions. We will help source talent from our own networks. We will help interview talent. We will onboard talent, and then we will leave. Because our goal is for companies to be sustainable. With it's teach a man to fish kind of concept. We don't want to be there. It's not a managed service.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. 20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. Today, I'm with Jay Jubas, a senior partner at McKinsey. Jay is a leader in McKinsey's technology, media, and telecommunications practice, and global leader of Fuel by McKinsey, which serves the startup and scale-up ecosystem. He is also a leader of McKinsey Israel TechHub, which provides services to startups, scale-ups, and VCs in multiple tech sectors in Israel. During the last year, Jay did Aliyah due to the huge potential McKinsey has recognized in the Israeli ecosystem. Jay holds a BS with highest honors and a master's in materials science from Columbia University and a PhD in physics from MIT. Prior to joining McKinsey, he worked as a research associate at MIT Lincoln Laboratory. Fuel is a different type of animal, I feel. It's a different type of idea behind, this idea of research, consulting, deep dive, but also working with agility and with startups across different stages. And so I'm really looking forward to picking your brain about what you're doing with Fuel as its global leader, a little bit about your journey as well, from Columbia as an engineer and then PhD at MIT. And so really, Jay, excited in these 20 minutes to unpack a little bit about where you are at within our ecosystem. And so thank you very much for being here.
Sure. No, it's a pleasure to be here, mostly to talk about fuel. If I need to talk about myself as the price for talking about fuel, I'll do a little bit of that as well.
Well, it'll cost just a little bit, just so that I can get perspective as to, who you are and sort of what your passions and motivations are, because you've done an engineering degree from Columbia, and then you transitioned to a doctorate in philosophy. What sort of your path been like in your head, or how do you think through yourself as a personality?
Very much an unplanned evolution of my career, as with so many people. I actually, believe it or not, originally applied to college to be an English major. I thought I would study English. I was very interested in the humanities. And then I got practical and I said, well, engineering, seems like a practical way to make a living. And then at some point, my senior year, really late in my junior year, I read a book by Steven Weinberg, a famous Nobel laureate in physics, called The First 3 Minutes, where he describes how the universe came into being, the first 3 minutes after the Big Bang. And I was so blown away by the explanatory power of physics. Of course, I had studied some physics as part of my engineering, but I hadn't quite appreciated modern physics and just the beauty of it, the elegance of it, and its explanatory powers, its predictive powers. So I decided to do a PhD in physics, and I did a PhD in physics and cosmology. And then after that, I came to the realization that while I loved it and I was okay, I wasn't on a path to win a Nobel Prize. There are many, many brilliant people. And I felt that I could probably instead of being an academic in a second or third tier institution, I thought I would try something else where I could have a bigger difference, bigger impact. And ultimately that led me to McKinsey, which I had never heard of, frankly. But luckily I was at MIT, which is really the first school where McKinsey started recruiting scientists to join. So I went for interviews, I joined, and here I am 26 years or so later.
Incredible. Now, this dissonance between diving deep and going broad, working on one research topic as you would do in a PhD or going for a Nobel Prize, or rather than working with a variety of startups, how does that work? When the trade-off between these two from your perspective?
Yeah, it really depends on kind of your scientific orientation. Cosmology is different than many areas of physics and engineering in that in order to really assess whether you have an interesting problem that you can even analyze, you have to first come up with a bit of an 80-20 answer. So that notion of doing some back-of-the-envelope calculations, creating toy models, simplified models of reality before you go deep is something that I think is innate to who I am. And, that's probably what contributed to my doing cosmology in the first place. And I think that's very much the same is true in business. Now, business often, the 80-20 answer is all we can do. It's what's necessary to make decisions. Because ultimately in business, you're not interested in the elegance of the solution. You're interested in driving to actions that will make a difference. And more often than not, the 80-20 version is good enough. If need be, we'll go deeper. But mostly our role as advisors is to get people to act. And
Incredible.
80-20 is
Okay.
Yeah.
Future faster, the McKinsey you know and the McKinsey you don't know. It's a pretty bold statement as you just enter the Fuel website. What are you trying to convey? Just simply, when somebody thinks about McKinsey and thinks about this new organism called Fuel.
Yeah, people tend to associate McKinsey, not incorrectly, with Fortune 500 companies, big expensive projects, lots of expertise, but mostly in a purely advisory capacity. And what we try to get across is in Fuel, we're bringing the McKinsey, so we're bringing a lot of that same IP that we understand. We understand the industries, we understand functional excellence and all sorts of functions. But there's also the McKinsey you don't know, which is we've hired lots of entrepreneurs. We've hired a lot of startup executives. We've come up with models that are very different commercially. They're not nearly as expensive. It's all success-based. So we need to shock people into recognizing that when we come to engage the startup ecosystem, we do it in a very, very different way than we do with the largest Fortune 500 companies. And they shouldn't be scared by kind of McKinsey price tag and the kind of a heavy footprint. We do it with a light footprint, very quick, drive to impact and leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the disadvantages of building such a strong brand over time that people have these immediate associations, and it's incredible. I think from a design standpoint of how you can break sort of that understanding and try to reposition the branding for certain types of organizations. When you're looking at McKinsey for startups, and as you go to the early stages, where does a company like McKinsey fit in to a startup that is trying to validate their idea, trying to realize their growth, to figure out what they're trying to do? In what ways does McKinsey fit in there right now?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you. So we call it Fuel because the metaphor we're trying to associate in people's minds is we're the kind of people who will add fuel to accelerate growth of companies. We're not the people bringing new ideas to startups. These are the entrepreneurs who have these really big and bold ideas. And frankly, we generally can't help until a company has established a product market fit, right? That's a real entrepreneur who's working things out, in the laboratory, in a customer environment, whatever it is, tweaking here, tweaking there, making things work. What we can do is once companies have product market fit, we're, I think, very, very qualified to help them scale and scale more rapidly. We inject fuel. And more often than not, we're not telling companies things they don't know. What we can do is just help them get to where they know they need to go. We know they need to go. And we can mind meld with them and help them get there faster by injecting human capital, by injecting IP that we have in different domains.
And so what does that process tangibly look like? I'm a startup founder. I reached product market fit. I have an interesting product and I've heard about this Fuel organization by McKinsey. And obviously I want to run fast. I'm about to raise my Series A, getting preempted to Series B. What are different ways in which I will be now interacting with McKinsey or Fuel specifically to accelerate my own growth?
So I'll give you a few examples. I'll draw from my own experience. So we work in Fuel across all sectors of the economy. So I myself will do a lot of work in enterprise software, but we'll do work in fintech. I do some of that as well, but we will work in biotech and we'll work in mobility and we'll work in sustainability. Pretty much every sector has a lot of innovation taking place in startups, and we like to be part of it. In software, what we typically do is a common presentation, and there's many variations on the theme. A common presentation would be, we're a SaaS company, like many SaaS companies, some traction with the SMB market, but we don't know how to sell to enterprise. We now want to move up market. We want to build an enterprise motion. So of course, the company knows logically what it needs to do. It knows the talent it needs to hire and so on, but that's a very long and time consuming process. So often what we will do is we will parachute in a team that actually has a sales methodology, that has experience selling to enterprise. And we can very quickly take a very small and skeletal sales organization and make them efficient and effective selling to enterprises, how they do account planning, how they communicate value propositions, how they price and package, things like that. So that's one example. We can help them, how they generate leads, how they qualify leads. There's so many steps in a selling process, which again, it's not necessarily rocket science. I mean, there may be advanced analytics involved, but it's not beyond the capability of the organization. They just don't have the bandwidth to hire enough talent, that they may not have the capital, they may not have the time it takes to recruit the talent. And we come in and can take that off their hands, working closely with them and make them very effective very quickly.
So from what I'm understanding here in this specific example, you're looking at a company who's, they seem to have product market fit. They're trying to now fuel towards their next accelerated growth, which potentially could be from moving from SMBs to enterprises. A traditional route would be to now hire a team of really great sales and marketing and strategists, and now start a long cycle of getting them on board. And hopefully they've made the right hire to be able to strategize and create this playbook. But you have these teams of professional parachuters who can come in and just land in your company, work for a while, get to know your company, lead based on the hundreds or thousands of previous case studies that they've observed. And that isn't, it's not mutually exclusive from hiring those people, right?
No, not at all. We will, in parallel to that, help hire and recruit to put ourselves out of work. Our goal is to inject the fuel and then get out of the way. So we will help on job descriptions. We will help source talent from our own networks. We will help interview talent. We will onboard talent, and then we will leave. Because our goal is for companies to be sustainable. With it's teach a man to fish kind of concept. We don't want to be there. It's not a managed service.
I mean, it also sounds that it makes sense to hire the person you want for the role after you have some idea of how you're going to sell and what your strategy is going to be like, because that requires a very different, perhaps, personality of a person. So hiring for those roles, once you have some foundation that you may be helping them build with fuel, it just sounds like also the hiring process itself will probably be a little bit healthier, right?
In some cases, they have very little. In some cases, they may have a sales manager, but they don't have anyone reporting to them. I mean, organizations are varied in terms of exactly what time and what capabilities they have. But in general, they don't have enough of what they need. They don't have enough people who have run and are trained on an end-to-end selling process, in this case of software. The same is true in manufacturing. If you're doing alternative protein and building a fab to do alternative protein kind of manufacturing, right? So it's a very specialized skill. We have people who know how to do that kind of thing. So we can be sort of the seed team, or we can be a team that augments an existing team to help them design it right the first time, so that they're not every startup is going to make mistakes along the way. Our goal is to bring our experience so that along the way they're making as few mistakes as possible.
Now, you made an interesting distinction before, that you have the role of the founders and the entrepreneurs, which is to find the product market fit, to build the product, and to make sure that the product is actually something that works. And then you have a bunch of these areas within the startup journey that you could utilize these team of professionals that are being parachuted in. So if you're looking now a little bit more broadly at the startup scene and where founders, in their seed, Series A, Series B stages are focusing their time, what is the greater picture here on what really are the priorities for founders today, and what types of things they could get help with, even if they don't know today that they could and maybe should get help with them?
It's a very broad question, and the answer really does vary very much by founder. What I find in my experience is one of the things founders struggle with is as organizations scale, they can't do everything themselves. They can't hire everybody. They can't onboard everyone. They can't embed a culture. They can't build excellence in every function and supervise excellence in every function. And that's a very hard adjustment for them to make. I mean, founders tend to be very good and like to know everything that's going on, and that's just not a scalable model. So a typical point will be at some point of scaling when it gets too big for a founder to really manage everything that's going on inside a company. That's often a time when we're brought in, but that's only a subset of companies. For other companies, it's around the commercial scaling point that I was talking about earlier. For other companies who haven't been through an exit process, it's support for an exit process. For other companies, it may be a strategic relationship with a strategic investor. How do you structure a relationship with a strategic partner? each founder has things that they are most comfortable with, very comfortable with, because they've done it before, because they've got people on their team who've done it before, and things that they struggle with. And, our goal is, we don't believe every company needs us, and certainly even the companies that need us don't need us at all times. Our goal is to be relevant to companies at the right time when they have something that they would like some augmentation of human capital for. And that happens at different moments along the life cycle of a company. I was on the phone today with a company, very, very successful company. It's going to IPO, hoping to IPO, capital markets permitting in the next several months. And what they want us to do for them is really nothing they couldn't do themselves, but they want an analysis of the market that they can share with potential investors. So they want to understand, they want to be able to communicate to the marketplace in a credible way. They're in a new space. It's not well studied by the Gartners of the world. And they want to be able, in a very rigorous way, to be able to explain to investors what their market is and how they're positioned within that market. So again, that's another classic use case, as it were, of people like us.
Now, for the people that are working within Fuel, the parachuters, if you will, inside the companies, what is their experience like? I mean, they're moving around from different projects. They're building expertise, but they're not tied to one idea or one organization. What is that experience like for them?
So lots of people, increasingly, we're finding that our young talent really wants to do this kind of work. So that has got a couple of implications. One is we're getting people who have done it a couple of times, want to come to McKinsey, build some skills for a couple of years, and then go back to the startup world. We have people who come to McKinsey out of university or at a young age and want to do this for a couple of years and then go to the startup world. And then there's some older people like myself who just are in love with this journey that entrepreneurs have and want to be helpful. So we bring and then we've got seasoned executives who've been serial entrepreneurs who've joined us as EIRs or senior advisory roles. So what we do is try to find the best possible fit for the given task at hand. And more often than not, what ends up happening is we have people specializing in particular areas, and that could be an industry. We have people who do a lot of software commercialization. We have people who do biotech. We have people who do payments. So we get people either specialize in sort of an industry, so they really understand kind of a space that a startup is in. And then we have people who are more horizontal, people who understand, how to develop a culture as a company grows, or sustain a culture as a company grows, or fix a culture, as a company grows. And we have people who understand how to scale an organization most efficiently. We have people who understand what happens when an organization has grown too quickly and now there's chaos and too many people who are not good cultural fits. How do you fix that? So people tend to specialize in particular almost problems, or I wouldn't say problems, opportunities or challenges that companies have. And then they end up getting very good at that. And that's part of their personal value proposition, both to other startups and when they leave McKinsey, if they leave McKinsey, to get themselves employed in other jobs.
It sounds like part of the fun is the dynamic nature of it, which is obviously very much in line with what's been happening around the world today, and the ability for a person to exercise their passion for different ideas, different technologies, different strategies, but also different types of organizations and different stages in which they join. And so it sounds like it's very fitting for the times today.
Absolutely. My wife's a doctor. So I remember she went through medical school, and in medical school, you kind of rotate through a bunch of things. You do a little surgery, a little obstetrics, a little, internal medicine, whatever, pulmonology. So I feel like the beginning stages of a career tend to be a little bit of see a lot of different things and then specialize. You're going to be an internal medicine doctor. You're going to be an obstetrician. We're the same way. You're going to be someone who really knows how to commercialize software, how to build a manufacturing plant. So it's very much that sort of model. Get a broad foundation and then specialize.
Now, if I'm a startup founder, and what I can see from a lot of the founders that I work with, or myself and friends, it's very easy to get lost in what I can do versus what I shouldn't do or should do. And there's a lot of moving pieces, and sometimes it's hard to know when is the right time to act and perhaps to outsource something or get assistance. What are some fundamental questions that I should be asking myself as a founder, whether it's for Fuel by McKinsey or whether it's any other outsourcing company? What are questions that I should be asking myself to wonder, is this something that I should get help with? Because obviously, a lot of times if I don't reach out, then maybe a lot of people don't know that I may need help with this.
Right. It's a great question. And I think that, at least in my experience, there are a few different patterns of how that happens. There's some founders you meet, and you may be in this group, who have an intuitive sense that something could be working better, right? They may not have done it before, but, X, Y, and Z are going great, but, topic Q, they're struggling with, and they just have a good intuitive sense when they feel things could be going better, and they just might want to explore. The answer may be, there's an element that you just have to work things out, and there's nothing we can do to help, or anyone can do to help, or there's an element, or in some cases, the outsiders are able to provide help. So some people just kind of have that intuitive sense. Some people get that sense by speaking to trusted confidants that they have, peers, and their investors, things like that. Sometimes it can be imposed by investors or others and say, you've got a problem with X. And we like to be part of the conversation. We're not an intensely commercial organization. Our goal is to be relevant, and we love very much when people reach out to us and engage us, and we can offer advice, and we don't get hired. That's very fulfilling for us too. So we just want to be relevant and share our thoughts. We tend to do it in a data-driven way. So, again, I'll focus on SaaS since that's what I know best. We have, a benchmarking tool we call SaaS Radar. So we've got very specific benchmarks from about 250, 300 private companies, plus 150 or so public companies. And we can find a relevant peer set for any SaaS company, similar ACV, similar growth rate, similar size. And we know what good looks like. Now, again, the benchmark is the start of a discussion. Then you've got to engage and understand, why is the number, only average and not top quartile? Why is it bottom quartile? But often when we engage, we will do it in a data-driven way. But not everyone wants to hear it that way either. So I think you kind of have to meet founders. They will learn the way they want to learn. And, some wake up themselves, some want to see data, some want to wait till investors are beating them up. I've seen all of those.
Jay, thank you very much. This was a really, really interesting conversation. I loved getting to know Fuel and a little bit about yourself as well. And constantly thinking, as you're describing Fuel in the different ways that you're interacting with startups, thinking to myself how I would interact with this situation, whether I would know to ask for help, and how such an organization can help fuel a company forward. So thank you very much. This was wonderful, and stay safe and stay healthy.
You too. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully our paths will cross again. Take care.